Hello everyone, and welcome to the fifth webinar in our series entitled Managing Your Sales Team. We have found through our experience working with tens of thousands of MSPs that this is an area that most of you struggle with. So we've asked David Weeks, who's a Director of Sales at SolarWinds MSP, to guide you through this subject matter. David's been in the industry for years and has worked with some of the most successful MSPs in the industry worldwide. And he works very hard transferring the knowledge he's gained from that experience to the MSPs as quickly as possible. And because of that, he's been named the CRN's channel chief twice already, likely again, but we'll see how that goes. We're very happy to have him presenting for us today, but before I hand it over to him, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping as always. First off, and before you ask, yes, we will be recording this webinar, and yes, we will be sending you out a link in the coming week so that you can go check it out online. Also, and further to that, which is new, we will be having a spot in the resource center for all of this come the beginning of May. More to come on that, we'll let you all know. During the presentation, as my second point of interest now, if you have any questions as we go, please type them into the question section on the right-hand side, and I'll either answer them immediately, depending on what they are, or I'll save them to the end for David to answer. If I'm going to save the question, it's because I think it's something that everyone can benefit in hearing, and I'll make sure I respond to everyone, letting you know that I'm saving that to the end when you do ask the question so that you know I'm not ignoring you, okay? So, without further ado, I'd like to thank David and pass it over to him to get started.
Great, thanks a lot, Aris, and thank you everybody for joining today. I've said this in the past, but it's absolutely true. We appreciate all of you taking the time to join us. We know how difficult it is for you to take an hour out of your day in your busy organizations, and as Aris mentioned, I do believe that this is an important topic. Whether or not you have a sales team, or whether you as the owner or as somebody else within the organization heads up sales, I think everything today will be relevant either way. Really, the whole concept about growing your business is about getting new opportunity in the door. And we're going to talk a little bit about different structures that you can look at today, different types of profiles of salespeople that you may be interested in, and what might be a fit for you as an organization and the type of clientele that you sell to. And really, there's some key steps that you need to look at, and defining some of those steps is the most important component to understanding how you want to build out a sales team or how you want to manage your existing sales team. And really first is looking at your preparation and understanding your market as a whole. Who are you selling to, and who do you want to sell to? And when you win business, or when you're looking to win business, what do you define as success? And of course, we all want to win every single deal, but that's just not the way that sales works. So that doesn't mean that, meeting with prospects and doing different types of engagements with them doesn't mean that we don't have a success point there as an organization. It's something that can allow us to continue to improve our sales process moving forward. Then looking at the sales model, we want to understand pre and post sales. Those two are absolutely critical. I would argue almost that post sales becomes more important in the long run, obviously, because retention to your business as a service provider is key to the valuation of your organization. And then really, what's the DNA of a successful sales team, and how do you hire and retain top talent? So we'll talk about those today. And then having it easy for your salespeople or for yourself to go out and make the offering. So productizing your services as much as possible makes them easier to consume by an end user. And we don't mean that everybody is going to have exactly the same program, but if you have a baseline to work off of, it makes it easier in your marketing, in your messaging, and in the way that you position it out in the marketplace. We're going to talk about selling technology versus business. You're going to hear me say a lot throughout this presentation. Managed services outside of selling to internal IT is 100% a business sale. It is not a technology sale. And then training, all salespeople need training ongoing, and we'll talk about some different ideas there. And then you need to have your metrics, and your metrics are key to everything to understand what's working, what's not, and where we might need to make some changes. So let's talk about market segmentation. Where's the sweet spot? Well, most service providers sell in the 5 to 75 seat range. It is a large component of the market, and it gives you a lot of opportunity to go sell through your services too. Now, there's an upper level there of 75 to 250, which is what we would call the mid-market. And selling into that area, you're typically going to start to run into some of those internal IT teams. Now, that could be where you're simply going to augment some services, where they're strictly going to look at project work, or potentially it could be that they're going to completely outsource everything to you, and that's a fair move as well too. Now, looking at the two, you've got to define how your messaging works. How do you fit as an organization, and how do you want your type of salesperson to approach those different verticals? And that's really a critical component into everything that you do, is understanding how you approach a prospect for the opportunity to look to do business moving forward. What do we need to really start to hone in on? The first one is, do we have partnerships that can help leverage our opportunity to get into one of these two areas? Second is, who is our target decision maker? We can go in and we can talk to different people in an organization, and we can have multiple meetings with them, but if they don't have the ability to make a decision or sign on the dotted line, all you're doing is prolonging your sale or increasing your cost of sale. And then looking at the geographical region that you want to work within. A lot of partners that I talk to will indicate that they only sell within a small area, which is interesting because you own a remote monitoring and management platform. That doesn't mean that you can't get outside of your local area, go further out in a geographical span to open up more opportunity, and use local resources within those markets when on-site is required. But today's day and age of management, we have the ability to do the majority of our work remotely. So other than hardware replacement or some type of hardware failure, it may be rare that you actually need an on-site resource. And then you simply spend your time doing your proper account management and chief information officer type meetings with your customers. So really thinking about this whole idea of the pyramid. Where do you feel that you fit as an organization? You may be in the 250 to 2,500, for instance, if you're selling to education. You may focus exclusively on 80, 100 seat plus organizations. Maybe you like to stick in the 20 to 25 user. All of that helps you define how you're going to build your process and the type of profile that you're going to need to look for when bringing on salespeople or managing the salespeople that you might have today. So first is a database. Where are we going to get our leads from? Leads have numerous opportunities for you, and where you garner those from is really going to be the key component to how you build out your sales process. You can't always call the same people because you're going to lose your value very quickly. And so you need to constantly have a refreshing of those leads that come into your organization. And when you get those new opportunities, then you have a new message that may be required, or you have, what we call in the sales lingo, fresh blood as an opportunity to go target. Then you need to look at how you're going to source new leads constantly. And that can be numerous different areas. You can look at the Googles, the Mantas. You can look at different things like buying lists out of Dun & Bradstreet and so forth. You can as simple as going to help articles and looking for people who are searching for IT people and then calling those businesses. All of those areas will help in generating those opportunities. You're typically going to have to scrub those lists though initially to ensure that you clean them up and that you have viable, qualified type opportunities. Now, utilize social media. Social media is about getting your brand out there, and your brand in your organization in the marketplace will help to drive inbound opportunity to you. So if you don't have a social media presence today, a very simple one is LinkedIn, giving you the ability to put your organization out there, getting people to follow maybe a tip of the day or something along those lines, and then you start to follow different people who may be connected to different people that you know. And so we really get that 6 degrees of separation out in the business community, and that starts to help you drive new inbound leads. As well, networking events. These are critical. I mean, the more that you can get face time out in the marketplace, the more opportunity that you're going to find. And, joining your local chamber of commerce, finding local associations if you work within maybe specific verticals or industries where you can go speak, where you can go talk about something of value to them without having a dedicated, defined, very poignant sales pitch, and instead becoming the industry expert where they want to learn more from you, where they want to talk to you more. And understanding that different opportunity is interesting because as you become the industry expert, you start to get what we call pass-through business. And pass-through business is critical. As you start to win people within certain demographics or markets, and that could be through something like the Chamber of Commerce or, entrepreneurs organization, but as you start to get those relationships and you win business, people will naturally refer you more because you have a connection with them. And that will play very well into your social media that you're utilizing as well to get your brand and your name out into the marketplace. Now, it all starts with a sales funnel. Okay, and one of the big things that we're a proponent of is inside to outside sales activity. And I hear consistently that cold calling doesn't work. What's interesting is even at SolarWinds MSP, we've utilized this model for years and we have consistent growth year over year, month over month. A cold call, I think, has the wrong perception in the marketplace. Most people believe a cold call is that inbound phone call that you receive where somebody jumps right into a pitch. That is not necessarily what we're talking about. What we're talking about is calling to find out if there's an opportunity for a further discussion where maybe there's some synergy to do business together. And I think if you change your mindset a bit in terms of what that outbound cold call might be, you'll start to see more success in it. So if we look at an inside salesperson in a typical sales funnel, we would want them, say, over 20 working days a month to make 1,000 dials. It seems like a lot, but really isn't. If the problem where people hit in trying to get, let's say 50 dials a day or 70 dials a day is that when they hire an inbound salesperson who's going to manage, obviously, the outbound calls and the inbound leads, is that they give them other jobs. And that's a mistake. You shouldn't be giving them another job. Their only job should be to dial for dollars. From those 1,000 dials, you're only going to generate around 75 leads a month. So the ratio seems dramatically different. However, 75 decent leads will lead to probably 15 really good meetings. And 15 of those meetings that you get booked will probably have 12 go off. A few will push out to the next month or a couple months out. So 12 of those meetings that you have, you go in, you run your qualification meeting, they agree to do some form of an assessment with you, you have further discussion, you'll probably close about 2.5 deals, a 20% closing ratio. Now, if you're working within specific verticals, you'll typically see that go quite a bit higher because you have very similar messaging and you have some leverage in terms of that industry that you drive in terms of reputation. But nonetheless, if you can close 2.5 to 3 deals a month, that is very solid, consistent growth for a service provider on an ongoing basis. And what that does is that naturally increases, again, the overall valuation of your organization. Now, what's important is everything that goes into the top of the funnel, because the less that goes into the top, the less that's going to come out of the bottom. And that's why looking back to what we just talked about in terms of always refreshing those leads and opportunities is what's going to continue to drive that consistent growth within your organization. And through that funnel, start to think about some of the metrics that you want to achieve, right? New versus existing. It doesn't mean that your funnel has to just be outbound net new business. Your funnel can alter to be upsell, cross-sell to your existing base. How many on average do you want your rep or reps to be completing? How many deals on average? And what do you want your average deal size to be? You should be controlling that. You can also look at it by monthly revenue, but you can get a lot more granular if you look at it by deal size. And you can throw a lot more metrics into this funnel. As you continue to build it out and grow it, you'll see very quickly different areas and different metrics that you want to track that will continually help you to improve your overall success rate. Now, thinking about the sales process, As things fall through the funnel and you start to get into the IP, what we call an initial presentation stage, which would be your meeting on site with a prospect, you're going to start to follow a sales process. Obviously, we initially started with the lead generation. That was our inbound marketing activity that helped us get a few leads in the door, click-throughs on the website, and then our outbound effort, which is the sales activity of our inside salesperson. Now with that, as we book those IPs, now what we're looking at doing is the business analysis with the customer. That's our initial qualification meeting. That's where we're going to go in and we're going to start to understand why are they even willing to meet with us. Because there's a reason that they chose to sit down with you, which means that your opportunity and your percentage to a potential close ratio is already increased from the initial lead that you received. So now you want to have the ability to sit down and get a better understanding of their business. This is where you want to ask a lot of open-ended questions, not yes/no questions. The more that they're feeding you information, the more that they're providing you ammunition to justify a service offering. From there, you're going to want to, manage some type of a workflow analysis, understand how they use technology, do your assessment, gather that information, and be able to come back with a growth and support plan. Okay, again, as you notice, everything I'm talking about is business related. The technology component of this you're doing in the background through your assessment. And all you're doing is taking those findings to then relate it to the business growth plan and the support plan that they're going to require moving forward. Now, this is where we start to show return on investment. We talked about it on my last session. Any of your channel specialists as well who you work with can help take you through how to run ROI in this stage. From there, you're going to ask for the business. Okay, we're not going to send a proposal and then hope that we hear back. The idea here is we're going to sit in front of them. We're going to present the plan. That plan is going to be very defined in what you feel is best for them, not what we call a choice sale, giving 3 or 4 options, because they'll tend to go to the low end to mid-range, which means you're not meeting their needs, and you're going to ask for the business. From there, we look at our implementation, our rollout, and then we move our way into the VCIO and account management, which ultimately takes us into upsell, cross-sell opportunity. So as you notice, the funnel is two-sided now. It's two-sided in the way that we manage our customers who are existing versus our net new opportunity that we're trying to bring into the business. So the cold call. Everybody's point of contention that I tend to talk to is that my market does not like cold calling. And I hear this on a fairly consistent basis. But what's interesting is most of you sitting on this call with us today are a partner, and you bought from us because of a cold call. So there's a reason that it works, because you can use that initial outbound call to simply generate a point of interest, to drive a bit of value, not give a direct sales pitch, and open the opportunity for an outside salesperson to have a further meeting. Now, if you don't have the staff today to have an inside to outside salesperson and maybe an account manager, that's fine. The premise and the structure still holds true, in that maybe you've hired an outside salesperson, you can task them with a certain amount of cold calls a day that you want them to make. They should be driving their own funnel and their own pipeline. So a high growth sales model, what you're looking at is generating that predictability and consistency, understanding where your pipeline sits. So for instance, when I look at the channel team here at SolarWinds MSP, we know what the typical pipeline amount is that we want them to carry. With our outside account executives, same idea. We know what the typical amount of pipeline that we want them to carry. Understanding what their close ratio is on a monthly basis gives us that consistency. And we track it and we measure it, but we always have to be giving new opportunity. Because if we don't, it starts to dry up. And when it dries up, salespeople get frustrated. And when salespeople get frustrated, they tend to look to leave, which leaves you in a bad position. Salespeople have to do a couple things every day. Put new opportunities in the top of the funnel and move them through. Move them through and try and close the deals. And understand what your typical sales cycle is. Is it 30 days? Is it 45 days? Is it 90 days? Is it 120 days? Knowing that gives you the ability to understand when you start to get your revolving growth on a regular basis. Because if you don't have a salesperson today and you're going to hire them in and you know that you have a 45 to 60 day sales cycle, you're going to have a 2-month lead time to start to see the deals moving in. But from that point, you should start to see a consistent flow on a 30-day cycle where they're starting to close those 45 to 60-day opportunities. Now, as they're working, you need to provide them value and resources. That value and those resources are critical to their success. Adding different areas of support such as videos, blogs, newsletters, case studies are all great. Something that your inside salesperson can leverage when they call out into the market and somebody says, I might be interested, but send me more info. An outside salesperson to have the resources in the initial meeting to quickly say, I'm going to send you some info that'll explain who we are, what we're about, and some of the successes that we've had in the marketplace with businesses just like yours. Because when they're in that initial assessment meeting and qualification meeting, it's not about you. You don't want your salesperson sitting there for 45 minutes talking about how great of an MSP you are, or they're not gathering any information to justify moving the deal forward. So thinking about this area of your cold call is critical to everything that you do on a regular basis, and giving them the support that's required to build out driving opportunity into the funnel for your outside salespeople. Okay, if you can get a dialer system. It makes it easier for the inside salesperson. If not, they do it the old-fashioned way with their fingers. Okay, have them do regular role playing with you. Make sure that their pitch is on par. Make sure that that inside salesperson is not just sounding like they're reading off of a script. Find out how dynamic they are. Can they handle objection early on in a call well, and how do they overcome that? And when you find the right people, you'll find that you'll be able to identify a sales model and a sales profile of a person where they're very good at the outbound call. And many of them actually like being in that position. And as long as you compensate them to a level that is at their expectation, that you can afford within your margins, and that drives the behavior that you want, then you will see the success that you need across those types of inside salespeople. Now, when we look at the DNA of a successful sales team, we are a big proponent, as I mentioned, of the inside to outside sales methodology. Okay, using an inside salesperson, where, as I mentioned before, they only have one job, and that job is to dial for dollars. Okay, typically, we would see a compensation of around $30,000 base with a $10,000 variable on hitting target. Okay, and if you're international, we can work with you on what those local rates would be. We understand them in all different markets. Okay, an account representative is going to be the person who is looking at cross-sell, upsell, somebody who's managing your existing base of customers. They're going to manage the life of the customer. They're in charge of all of your renewals, but as well, they're in charge of finding new opportunity within those customers. Compensation package increases, and then they'll have a variable on target earning of $20,000 to $30,000 for driving new opportunity. So a different profile of person, okay, but they help manage your existing book of business and ensure the retention of that. And then your account executive is your outside salesperson, okay? They're going to manage the entire sales cycle from inception to close. They're going to bring on your new customer acquisition. They're going to have a higher compensation package, typically around $50,000 to $55,000, and they're going to have a higher on-targeted earning of $30,000 to $40,000. Now, why do we have that? Because your outside salesperson is typically the most coin-operated person. Okay, so we pay them at a greater rate because their only job is to go hunt. That's it. That's all that we want them doing. Now, again, you may not have the ability to have 3 profiles in your business today. That's absolutely fine. You can find salespeople who can work all 3 models, or you find somebody who's the profile of an inside and an account executive, and you as the business owner or your management level, or maybe somebody in your organization who's very good at this, would be the account representative. So Being able to build these profiles, we have many different ways that we can do it within your organization and work with you to help you build out what is the best model for you and how do you want to first go to market to target this. So let's look at the different profiles a little bit more in depth. As I mentioned, that account executive is a hunter. That is your outside salesperson. Their only job is to find new business. They are typically 100% coin operated. You pay them well, they will go find you the business. They find you the business, you generate more recurring revenue within your organization, and your valuation as a service provider goes up. There's a big question here about whether or not you pay trailers to an outside salesperson, to the account executive, to the hunter. Typically, we would only see trailers paid if you do not have the model of somebody who can manage the account ongoing. But then, we can play with different compensation numbers on how much we pay up front versus what we pay on trailers. They're going to sell project work with a lot of your business. That's going to be paid at a lower rate because it's one time for you. Okay, it's not ongoing revenue month over month. That's where we pay the higher on target earnings. Okay, they like upfront commission. They close a deal, they want to get paid for it. Okay, they're fairly, they're not simplistic people, but they like a simplistic model. And a simplistic model is, how am I going to get my cash? And when you can handle that and build that correctly for them, you will bring in the right profile as an opportunity into your business. The farmer completely changes. That's the person who wants to manage and coddle your existing base. They're going to work off of trailers. They may get a small percentage of the upfront commission if they're involved in the deal, but if not, they're going to get paid a percentage of the monthly recurring revenue on the contract, ensuring that they're maintaining and managing that. Then they as well get compensated for finding upsell, cross-sell opportunities that you target them on. Because we don't typically sell a net new customer with every single service that they need. Okay, so you're going to have to build different metrics and a different model for the farmer. But that might be the person who's going in and selling, after the initial contract signed, more project work, or selling additional services. Maybe initially you just picked up a monitoring contract. Now they're going to go in and sell some of the preventative maintenance. Maybe they get some backup services, some security services, and they're adding to the book of business, and that's their job. So as that monthly recurring revenue amount increases, their book of business increases. And then again, we've already talked a lot about inside sales because we believe it's so critical, but their only job is to dial. Okay, they don't make coffee, they don't plan parties, they don't do events, they dial. Okay, and they are comped based on the amount of meetings that are booked and that actually go off. And the reason that they're comped on the amount of meetings that actually happen, because if not, you don't want them putting fake bookings in. And their success is tied to their outside executive, the person who goes out and closes all of those good opportunities for them. So they're going to be a team, very tight-knit, the inside and the hunter. But if you have the farmer, they're going to play into it as well, because a business is going to want to understand, as we talked about, the post-sale support and how does that work. So when you have the three, or when you eventually build to the three, you will have a very high value, high margin, high success rate sales model within your organization. Now, when we look at the different profiles, they're not easy to find as you're going out to hire. And I'm not saying that they're simple, but as you decide what do you want to bring into your business first, it will help it make it easier for you to go out and find those different types of people to come work for you. Okay, a lot of people believe that the first person that they should hire is a director of sales. But if they have nobody to direct, why do we own or hire a director of sales? My view is the first person, if you do not have a sales team today, that you should hire is an inside salesperson to book calls for you as the business owner. Get them to drive the leads for you. And as you see the pipeline fill up, then you can start to look at the hunter profile. And as you see your general book of business grow out, then you can look at the farmer profile. If today you have a very large book of business, you may need to start with an inside and a farmer. Okay, and we can help you analyze that based on where your organization sits today by working with your channel specialist. And we have a lot of different areas where we can support you in building out a sales process, building out your sales metrics, and building out the type of profile of people that you should bring in, or should you expand, or so forth. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sales is not this simple, hey, I go out, I hire one of these profiles, and I'm going to see instant success. It's not. Okay, in your first few hires, you're probably going to struggle with getting the exact right profile. Why? We're salespeople. We sell ourselves well. But you can look for some key indicators in some of these profiles. For a hunter, look for somebody who has sold services. Okay, not necessarily hardware, because they're used to selling something where they can show something flashy. When we sell managed services or security services or something along those lines, it's intangible. On the farmer profile, we want to look for somebody who's done account management before, okay, that they can give you the references of existing customers that they talk to who would hate to lose them as their account manager. Okay, that will help you start to weed out different people that may not be a fit. And then inside sales, have they done it before? Are they scared to get on the phone? Through the interview, maybe you have them do a remote pitch to you or to a few prospects and see how well they do. So you can put some tests in place during your interviews as well too, and really start to define, do I have the right profile of person that I'm looking for? And then above all else, will they fit the culture of your organization? They have to fit within the culture. If not, they're not going to work well with all of your other departments, because you have a whole engineering team that has to go implement this, so they have to work well with the salesperson. So you've got to make sure that that culture and that synergy is there as an organization, or you're going to find that you're going to struggle. Train, 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 and train. On a regular basis, have training for them. If you can't do it yourself, find somebody who can do it for them. We have training here minimum once a week for worldwide sales. You've got to keep the blade sharp. Okay, all we are is a pitch, some resources, and the person sitting in front of a prospect, talking about why they want to do business with us and understanding their business to justify that result. So you've got to have a clear, defined message. You've got to understand what is your value proposition, what is your brand, and make sure that you deliver what you actually sell. So make sure that your salespeople follow what you want them to follow. Okay, if you're smaller in size today and you're looking to build out a sales team and you're bringing somebody on, I highly recommend as the business owner that you go on every closing call for quite some time. It brings a lot of credibility to the sale and allows you as well to see the impression of your salesperson in the market. If you don't have time to do those calls, do follow-ups as the business owner after they've won some business to see the perception of the sales process and how well did they handle themselves. Ensure that as you're bringing on salespeople that you have a training program in place, right, for your services that you've productized that we talk about to make them easy to consume, and the product side, because I'm sure that you all sell products as well too. I like regular training. I like it every week at minimum. Okay, you should be looking at twice a month, once a month of reviews of what's working, what's not, how do we fix it, how do we make it better, inputs from all different teams. Have them give feedback of what they feel is working. You look at the metrics, look at the numbers, see where you can drive maybe new improvements potentially, and have that culture be built. The more that you get buy-in from all different teams, the more success that you'll see in your sales model. So we have a compensation calculator. I'm not going to pull it up live today, but we have the ability to work with you. Compensation is all based around driving the behavior that you want. So let's look at a hunter. In this instance, what we're looking at is we're asking them to close about 4 deals a month. Really, we're asking them to close a proactive and a managed and 2 a la carte, which are going to be smaller MRR deals, but maybe higher in margin. Now, what you have to look at again is their salary and what's their total employee cost. And if you notice the yellow arrow, what I've done here is I've inputted 200% of the new monthly gross margin. Okay, so I've taken some of your costs out of this, and you're going to pay them the first 2 months of that contract upfront. Why? That's their incentive. They're coin operated. They want their money right away. You retain the remaining 10 months. If you have a farmer, you're paying a smaller percentage out. We'll review that in a bit. But it allows them to see the dollars coming in right away, and that's what motivates them to go out and bang on doors and pound the pavement to go find you new business. Now, if they find you project work, as you notice, it's a much smaller upfront, 5% one time. Your gross margins are smaller on that typically as well too. Now, you may want to, at certain times, throw a spiff in. You can throw a spiff in if you want. If you want to get some extra business that month on a la carte or a particular new service that you're offering, throw a spiff in and incent your hunter to go offer that on all contracts. And what we'll do in this calculator is give you numerous areas where you can look at your metrics and what your expectation should be to hit quota based on the forecast that you've provided to your reps. The next area is looking at the farmer. They're going to be looking at trailers and retention, not really getting upfront payments. So account growth is all about upsell, cross-sell. In this instance, maybe they're looking at 2 a la carte and moving one customer to a proactive. Maybe that's just an example as a metric that you might give to a farmer on a regular basis. In this case, what we're looking at is an idea of them driving business to a higher value contract and selling some additional services. So if you notice, I've got a 10% monthly trailer on new monthly gross margin. Okay, and they might take 10% on projects. Maybe I just want to pay them a flat rate 5% on all contract value moving forward. That's okay. I can do that as well too, but I want to have metrics to increase the business with each customer. Why? Because then their 5% cut that they get continues to grow. And so what we start to see is that leverage of year 1, 2, and 3. What are our expectations? So they may have started with a book of business of $7,350 a month, and I want to see them grow that by year 3 to $29,400, which means that their trailer is going to grow from $500 a month to maybe $55,000. Okay, their salary stays the same, but they're starting to make more money. So where their compensation was flattening out at around, 10, 20,000 in year 1 up to 50, they see the growth in their progression. Now you're going to get to a point where the farmer owns a book of business and they can't continue to manage anymore, or their account management falls down. And you'll need to figure out what that point of reference is. It could be amount of customers. It could be based on monthly recurring revenue. So there's all different ways that you can look at this. But again, we can work with you to help you build it out. And within this compensation calculator, which is available to anybody on this call, okay, you can go to your channel specialist for it. We will show you some of those metrics and how you can track this to ensure that your reps are hitting quota, that your forecasts are sound, and that you're not overcomplicating the sales process. The more simplified it is, the more success that you'll have. Inside sales compensation, pretty easy. As we mentioned, they're paid based on the amount of deals that are booked by the hunter, the outside account executive. They have a smaller salary, but we tend to throw spiffs on inside sales to get them maybe to increase from 50 to 100 dials a month, or to book a certain profile of prospect that we want to talk to. Maybe, for instance, this month, we're going to spiff higher on managed customers who are in the professional services space, things like medical clinics, financial, accounting, lawyers. And we want to give a little bit of an extra incentive for them. Okay, and then they get a certain amount of commission based on the new monthly gross margin. But again, they're tied to what their hunter can do. They're tied to the success of that hunter, and that's why that team has to have a lot of synergy. Okay, so they're only paid on closed deals and spiffs. So thinking about the summary of how we're going to manage all of this. Preparation. The more that you prepare up front, the more success that you will have moving forward. Be realistic. How many deals today do you close as an organization if you don't have a salesperson and you're thinking of bringing one on? So you bring on that salesperson, try not to target them with 20 net new customers a month if your historical has been 1 or 2. I don't disagree with an uplift, but let's be realistic in how we build that out. Know who your customers are today. Analyze your customers ahead of time. Break them into groups. Do you have verticals maybe that you haven't realized that you sell within, that you can start to market differently? Do you want to go after a different type of opportunity out in the marketplace? But the more that you know your customers and your potential market opportunity, the better that you can prep and again, make it realistic for the salesperson that you bring on. Don't have numerous amounts of different offerings that you want the salesperson to try and sell. Okay, the more that you have, the more confusing and convoluted it gets for them. Simplify it, productize it, and make it easy to consume. The customization will come after the deal is closed when required. Train, 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 and then train again. Salespeople tend to have ADD. We hear 20% of what you tell us because all we want to do is go sell. So when you repeat it, it will start to stick. So the more that you train and the more that you improve them and the more that you help them grow as a salesperson, the more loyal that they'll be to you. At the sales model, know what your sales process is. We gave an example today of lead generation through to the business analysis, through to the workflow, through to providing a business support option, and then working to close the deal. But maybe that doesn't quite fit for what you do. Maybe you want to shorten that in some areas. Maybe you want to lengthen it depending on who you deal with. But we can help you build a baseline of a sales process that you'd like to follow. Be out in the market, be in your pipeline, be in your funnel, know what the opportunity is, help drive the opportunity, get in front of a prospect if needed, and support your salespeople. You are nothing without your salespeople when you bring them on. They are going to become the lifeblood of your net new business. Okay, and don't just manage a number, because managing a number frustrates people. Manage people. That's going to help bring a better culture and a better return on the investment that you're making in them. When you bring in top talent, pay them to retain them. Because you will always get the benefit off of a salesperson in your recurring revenue as an organization. Okay, you always know your margins and you know what that business is worth, that you're not going to overpay your salespeople, but they can have a very lucrative income and a lifestyle, and yet you can be just as successful and more as the organization, which is the right way to do it. And if they're not working, you've got to get rid of them. There's nothing worse than a bad salesperson out in the marketplace, because they're typically the face of your company and they're the ones representing you. Don't just send them out to the market and hope that it all works out. Have the metrics, track the metrics, look at them on a regular basis, and hold them accountable is key. If you're seeing 3 or 4 months of very low growth and not hitting target, maybe 30, 40%, you probably have a problem. If you've got somebody who's hitting 70 to 80, 85, maybe the odd time getting to 100, probably need some more training, maybe some more support, find out what's going on. Mid-range person, 50%, depends on how much you want to invest in them, which way that they'll go. It's not easy to make that decision. But again, remember that they're the face of your company out in the marketplace. So if you feel that they're not working out, make the change. And most importantly, hold yourself accountable. You're going to set the targets, you're going to set the goals, you're going to set the forecasts, and you're going to have an expectation. And that when that expectation is realistic, you've got to hold yourself to it. If that means that you're almost getting there and you need more people, you're going to have to look at that investment. Do you need more resources? You'll have to look at that investment. Do you need to drive more leads? You'll have to look at that investment. But you are going to be the linchpin of everything at the top of the organization to figure out the success of your salespeople as best you can. So try not to jump to the sales model and hiring a person before you've done your preparation. Don't jump to hiring a salesperson or building your sales model before you're sure that you've simplified and standardized and productized your offerings as best you can, because that's going to make it easier for you to do your onboard new hire training. Then you can start to look at your sales model. You can look at your compensation plans. You can look at your expectation on forecasts and quota. And then you bring in your salesperson. They'll have some feedback on it. You'll have some discussion. We send them out into the market after their training, and we look at the data and the reporting. But again, most important, manage people, not just a number. When you manage people, they'll want to work for you, and they'll fit better into the overall culture of your organization. So I've said this a few times. Drive the behavior that you want in the way that you build your compensation plan. You bring in a hunter and you want to pay them very little, they're going to leave quickly, or you're not going to get a very good hunter. Okay? If you want them as a farmer to do what's right by your customers, which I know you all do, then you want to pay them on trailers. Why? Because they can't afford to lose business off the book of business that you've given them. So you drive the behavior in the way that you compensate them and where they are paid from. And as I said, pay them accordingly. Okay, all salespeople, for the most part, are coin operated. And they feel that if they do the work and they help maintain it, and they feel that they have an ownership stake in the business that you drive, whether net new or ongoing, that they're a big part of that and that they want to be compensated accordingly. If you're paying a farmer and they lose business, they lose revenue. That's accountability. Okay? Unless it's completely out of their hands, i.e. a business goes under one of your customers, maybe not their fault, but the trailer would stop at that point. Okay? But if you feel that they're not managing something correctly or they didn't do what's right by the customer, then there may be a penalty against their compensation. Compensation is never static. You can build a plan today, it can work for 6 months, and you might have to change it. Maybe it lasts a year, you should review it then as well. I recommend reviewing compensation at least once a year. Okay, the market's going to change, your customers are going to change, the services are going to change, what they have the ability to sell is going to change, and as a result, the compensation back to the salespeople has to revolve and evolve as well too. So I know today probably seems like a lot, but I hope it was helpful in giving you some impressions of different ways that you can build out a sales organization internally, whether it be starting with one person who's going to run all 3 roles, or you're looking to add, or you just want to start with one of the roles. Either way, we're here to support you, and we're going to continue to support you in that. Everything from building out your leads opportunities, building your programs, your pricing, what are your margins, et cetera, all the way through to close and your metrics. Okay, we want to provide you that support to help you grow your organization. So I think we're going to go to some questions now. Eris, I'm not sure how many you have, but if you would like to jump into those, and while you're kind of filtering through them, so everybody's aware, our next session will be on April 26th on increasing sales through marketing success. So as I mentioned earlier, social media, your marketing play, everything driving your leads, this will be critical to your preparation.
Yeah, Dave, we do have a few questions. The first one we got a few times while we were going through it was to define what a trailer is, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So what we mean by a trailer is, talking about a hunter, for example, what I said was, let's say you sign a contract for $1,000 a month. You're going to pay them 200% upfront, which means that they're going to get $2,000 on that deal, the first 2 months of the contract. A trailer is a percentage of the contract value on a monthly basis. So if that contract, for instance, is $1,000 and you're going to pay a trailer of 10%, that means that every month you will be paying your farmer $100 of that contract as part of their overall compensation package.
SPIF as well, please.
Yeah, SPIF is a one-time incentive, usually a cash outlay or some type of a gift for hitting a very specific target that you want them to achieve. So for instance, let's say that maybe you bring on a new data backup and recovery solution, and you want to go out and you realize that across all of your customer base, you only manage 30% of them with your backup. So you want to incent to try and drive the other 70% to get onto your backup because it means much higher margin for you and it streamlines the training for your engineers. So that month, I'm going to incent my outside salesperson, my farmer, or maybe even my inside salesperson to focus on that activity. And every time that they achieve it, they'll get a one-time cash payment as a bonus on top of their commission. So maybe I was paying the farmer $100 every month on a contract, and then they get that customer to take our backup solution. I pay them a one-time bonus of $200.
Now, earlier when you were talking about inside sales and inside sales compensation, it sounded like you were talking about paying inside sales specifically on booked appointments and closed business, and didn't mention anything about salaries or hourly wages. Can you clarify for that? Because some folks got a little confused and thought you didn't want to pay them a salary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, you do pay them a salary, okay? It's much lower. Typically, it is in the $20,000 range, okay? They will have a much lower salary. And yes, then they are compensated based on the success of the hunter. What the hunter closes, they get compensated on it as well, too. We don't compensate on every dial, but you may have a much lighter compensation based on qualified opportunities that do go to a meeting. Or you could use the SPIF opportunity for that. For every qualified opportunity and the meeting goes off, they get a $50 bonus.
One person asked, and this is a tough one, I think. Now, I know you touched on this, but this person sees a challenge adopting a software hardware sales approach for long-term, less transactional business. How do clients, I guess the end clients, not see the difference between someone who's genuinely managing their relationship versus someone who's incentivized to be transactionally focused? They've seen this as a challenge to becoming a trusted advisor. Any advice?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually a really good question. When a hunter walks in the door, they're 100% breathe, smell of, and ooze salesperson. A farmer knows the right time to sell, okay? And finding the right profile of farmer, they also have to have an account management component that you task them with that they have to do. It could be the monthly reports. Maybe they're your chief information officer. So there's a point where you need to teach them to sell through relationship, through recommendations, and doing consistent ongoing return on investment. So it looks more consultative than direct sales, okay? And ensure that your farmers have regular touch points with your customers where they're walking in or having a conversation with them and they are not selling, okay? If not, they are just gonna become the hunter, okay? A sheep in wolf's clothing, or a wolf in sheep's clothing, sorry, the other way around, and they're going to start to lose that relationship. They're going to lose that account management component, and it's going to negatively affect your overall retention of your existing book of business.
Couple questions in and around the salary numbers and such that we saw throughout. Just want to remind everybody that we didn't obviously make these geo-specific for every state, every country in the world that we work with. But Dave, do you have any advice on where to find the right number for my territory, whatever my territory might be?
Yeah, absolutely. Payscale.com is a great site everybody can go to. You can look up actually almost any position in regards to IT sales and services. It'll give you a very good indication. Now, if you are unsure, you find it's off, talk to your channel specialist, okay? We deal with partners in all different markets worldwide. We see a lot of those numbers. Obviously, somebody who's a salesperson for managed services in downtown London, UK, or New York City is going to be very different than, rural Holland or South Africa versus rural US or Canada. Okay, so we have a completely different viewpoint whenever we talk to each partner based on what they should be paying, based on the local market, cost of living, things along those lines.
Okay, now we're running out of time, so we're going to end it there today, everybody. As you see on the screen, next webinar is in 2 weeks. This webinar is going to be presented by our VP of Marketing. So make sure you get there. She knows her stuff. She'll definitely let you guys in on some secrets, at least get the whistle wet and get started. To bring this up, some people were making comments during the Prezzo that we need more sales information, more marketing information. I want you to know that we do have a plan for that. May and June will be focused on sales, and the 2 months after that will be focused on marketing. So lots of information coming at you guys on these two very important subjects. So thanks everybody for coming. A reminder again, we will be editing this webinar through the marketing team and then sending you all a link to where we've posted it on a private YouTube channel. We will also be creating a website on the Resource Center for all of this. Should be up beginning of May. More to come on that. We will let you guys know. When the recording does become available, we will be emailing you that link. We will also be emailing you a link to go download that sales compensation calculator that David was alluding to and showing you screenshots of today. So fear not, you have access to that as well. So thanks again for coming, guys, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks on the next webinar. Bye now.